Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Innovate Finance, where we talk to industry leaders on the latest trends and initiatives in fintech and what's next for financial services. Our podcasts are available on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Podcasts. I'm Janine Hurt, CEO at Innovate Finance, and I'm so excited to have with me today Flora Coleman, Global Director of Policy and Government Relations at Klarna. Flora, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, most of our listeners probably know that Klarna really is the leading global payments and shopping service, providing smarter and more flexible shopping and purchase experiences to 150 million active consumers across more than 500,000 merchants in 45 countries. Klarna offers direct payments, pay after delivery options, and installment plans in a smooth one-click purchase experience that lets consumers pay when and how they prefer to. So, Flora, we're going to talk a lot about Klarna and Klarna's journey today. But firstly, I actually want to start out with your background because you've had a really interesting professional journey in fintech, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about it and also your passion for financial innovation.
Hi, well, thank you so much. And yeah, so my background. Well, I joined Klarna around 2.5 years ago and started off as their Global Director of Policy and Government Relations. And I really got involved with Klarna and was so pleased to be able to take up the role because I'm really interested in consumer financial services and breaking down the traditional operations of old school banks. And so for me, Klarna is a real place to be able to do that, where we are delivering, accelerating commerce, driving a better shopping experience, and really innovating and moving quickly to solve customers' real problems. So that was a bit about Klarna and what I do there and why I joined. But my background is in policy and public affairs, which is why, of course, I do this role now. And prior to joining Klarna, I was at Wise for 5.5 years, formerly TransferWise, so international money fintech. And I joined them in London when they were just 60 people in London, in very early stage to hire someone in policy and government relations. And I left just a few days before they actually listed. So a really, really incredible experience there, delivering better outcomes for consumers through improving the regulatory environment around consumer financial services and foreign exchange payments, working around the world. So starting off in the UK and Europe, and then growing and delivering policy and government relations in the US, in Australia, in Japan, in Singapore. But my background is not in banking or payments, actually. I did some financial services work when I worked in a consultancy in London. And previously, I started my career actually as a political advisor in the House of Lords, where I worked on some financial policy, but really just my passion is making regulation better for people and working to campaign to change regulation and change policy so that we can improve outcomes, really.
I think your passion for creating a better environment for the consumers is really coming through there. And we know that helping consumers achieve financial health, especially during this cost of living crisis, is incredibly important to so many fintechs, and particularly Klarna. Can you tell us a little bit more about Klarna's mission to make financial services more transparent and fair and more democratic?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Klarna, we are working to help people save time, save money, and worry less. But the reality of that is that we are offering a safe, affordable credit. It's low cost. There's no interest. It's really manageable, and it's a really super alternative to credit cards. So we've got at the moment people around the world. I mean, I think about it kind of personally from my own background. And before when I was in the start of my career and in the early stages of my career, like most people, we open up credit cards and take out short-term finance options, and those things stay on your record for years. I bought from catalog companies, store card finance. I like shopping, which is one of the reasons I love Klarna. And in those, I managed to get myself into serious difficulty, and I had a terrible credit rating when I went to try and buy my first house about 3 years ago, all because of one missed payment for one of those catalog companies when I found it really hard and really difficult. And so, that's my personal journey about why it's so important that we give people access to safe and affordable credit. But also you can hear that, and I'm sure you have probably heard that from our founder and CEO, Sebastian Siemiatkowski. We've all got our personal journey where we're trying to make finance more affordable, and particularly when you're looking at the cost of living crisis, our average, credit that a consumer has is around £150. Whereas you're looking at credit card debt of £1,000, and you got people willingly. So I've got some fascinating stats. So in the UK, 40% of people are paying us back early, and there's no penalties for that. We're pro that. The average outstanding debt on a BNPL loan is £150 versus £1,072 on credit cards, and 99% of people are paying us back, whereas the default rate is 30 to 40% better than it is on credit cards. So that's really what we're doing within our credits. But of course, then we've got the wider payments network, and that's the things that I find very exciting too, because we are actually delivering a viable alternative to credit and debit cards through open banking payments and direct payments.
Flora, those are some incredible stats. Can I dive into those a bit and also ask, does the holiday season affect those stats or trends in any way?
I mean, so the holiday season has kind of started now with the concept of Black Week and Black Friday, where tons of consumers have taken advantage of really important deals. And actually, what's been very interesting this year is that we've actually seen a lot more deals and discounts than we've seen previously. But average order volume has stayed more or less consistent. So people are ordering about the same in total volume, but the number of items they're getting within that and the number of deals they're taking advantage of has increased. The types of products have also changed as the consumer demographic changed. I think what's kind of interesting to me, I was looking at some of the stats, and fastest growing demographic we've seen in BNPL is the over 57s. So, for example, one of the fastest growing products is leaf blowers, which I don't know about you looking out my garden. It's pretty timely, but it's just not what you'd expect when you're thinking about who's using Klarna.
So let's talk then a little bit about new technology being at the forefront. And I know that Klarna has moved really quickly to adopt ChatGPT. What has your experience been of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so adoption of ChatGPT was something that I was on parental leave earlier on in this year. And I think like many people, we hear certain announcements about AI-powered tools. And even though I am hugely personally pro-tech, it's still kind of frightening, the concept of something, taking our jobs, as Elon Musk alluded to recently when he was in London. But actually, it's been so exciting. I am loving the ability to use technology to make my life so easier and focus on the important work. So the editing, the feedback, the cues. So the AI powered tooling, it's not simply ChatGPT, it's across the suite, the adoption we've done, and it's really making our lives better by improving the operations we have for our customers.
And let's move on to regulation. As we know, this is a big topic for so many fintechs. And Innovate Finance, of course, we welcome the opportunity to respond to HMT's consultation for the regulation of buy now, pay later. And we know that many of our BNPL members are also welcoming the move to regulate the sector. What is your position? What is Klarna's position on this space? And what would you like to see implemented in the next few months?
Well, you may remember some of our advertising from a few years ago, where we cheekily poked fun at the idea that every bank and every financial services provider is anti-regulation. We've been hugely pro-regulation, and you can see that in every single piece of public documentation we've submitted and in all of our private meetings, because I'm there. But the key thing is we've got to get it right to make sure that there is access to more manageable and interest-free credit. In the EU right now, we're seeing the implementation of the Consumer Credit Directive, which is the root document that all of our consumer credit rules in the UK actually come from too. So that's been reviewed and that's being implemented and what's called transposed, i.e. they're going through the national law and making sure that it works for all those member states in the EU. And there's similar initiatives in Australia, in the US. And so in the UK, yeah, we want to see that regulation come through.
And then moving from regulation to one of the themes you touched on earlier, which was around really catering to the end consumer. And back in July, we at Innovate Finance launched our second series of Innovation in Finance in partnership with BBC Storyworks. And this series really examined how technology is transforming people's lives across the world. And the themes such as financial inclusion, financial wellness, fintech for net zero were really key players in this discussion. I would love to hear a little bit more from you about how Klarna is engaging specifically around these specific topics.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about some of the differences with Klarna between traditional and old forms of credit, but particularly important is also some of the tools that we've implemented. Despite having a much better product, we've still implemented tools to help people to manage their finances better. So, for example, recently in the UK, we launched a credit opt-out tool. So similar to freezing your credit card like you used to in the old world, you can put an opt-out and say that I don't want to be disclosed the credit options, and instead use purely Klarna's Pay Now, direct payment and shopping services without the option to have those underpinned by credit, because that just might suit someone at this time. So these are some of the initiatives that we've used to make sure that we're providing better services ahead of, without the need for any regulation in order to force us, because we really take people's financial wellness seriously. But I wanted to touch upon the last one you mentioned, which is actually, fintech for net zero, and sustainability is something that's really important to us as a bank that provides shopping services. And so we're the first fintech to sign the climate pledge to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2040. I'm going to be throwing a lot of stats at you, but I think this is something where, everyone can say they're taking sustainability seriously, but sometimes something really needs some clear evidence. So some of the other elements is contributed $2.35 million from our internal carbon tax towards several climate initiatives in 2023. Compared with the updated 2021 emissions data, Klarna's overall carbon footprint decreased by 3.75% in 2022. We're supporting 56 environmental initiatives, which include over 70 organizations throughout North America, South America, Africa, Europe, and Asia. Donated to $11 million to Give One organizations out of our $16.5 million pledge. And we've had 61,000 people, including government officials, schools, community members, engaged in activities through our Give One to restore our planet. We've got a CO2 tracker in there to help you as a consumer manage your emissions, with over 5.5 million consumers choosing to use that, which is really exciting. And over 324,000 of our consumers, on average, actively track their carbon footprint through Klarna each month.
That's amazing. And we just put out a report a few weeks back on the impact of fintech. And while we've got really phenomenal numbers across most of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we actually are only seeing around 9% of fintechs having a positive impact on the climate. And there's so much more to do. So the fact of looking at all of that data and all of the initiatives you're putting forward is a really, really positive and setting a great example for the industry too. So let's see. Flora, obviously partnerships must be quite critical to you and to your growth. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the industry partnerships that you're driving forward and what you look for in a key partner?
Yeah, I think the concept of Klarna is actually a shopping ecosystem, and so we're supporting the whole retail economy to thrive. So what we are delivering, I think the best place to kind of look at our partnership ecosystem is our app, where we have 75 million downloads and 27 million monthly active users worldwide. And they are using all of the Klarna services and working with all of our partners and retailers to get the items that they want at the best value price, and to be managing those deliveries, to checking those receipts. So it's more of a shopping ecosystem approach than that traditional fintech partnership model.
And what's next for Klarna? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just received our FCA approval for our regulated products in the UK, which is very exciting. Yes, this is a procedural tick box, but it means that the FCA has been through our processes in detail and approved that we're following consumer duty and making appropriate affordability checks. So it stands us in really good stead for BNPL regulation, which we're very keen to happen. We've got a big focus on immediate payment, i.e. pay now. People paying with money they have, which accounts for over 30% of our transactions globally, and particularly in markets like Germany and Sweden is a large part, and looking at more ways we can make that process smoother. And we're seeing a resurgence of interest from the travel sector as it recovers post-COVID. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens there. You may have seen we've just announced our partnerships with Airbnb and Cathay Pacific in the travel sector.
Very excited. And really, Flora, the last question I want to ask you is, it's always fantastic to see female leaders in fintech paving the way forward. Is there any advice for other women looking to follow in your footsteps?
One thing I'll say is reach out. I'm always happy to meet with women. And with that in mind, I met with a woman in industry yesterday, and we were talking about what it takes to be a good female leader. And I think one of the key things is not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. And how are you actually working to deliver female development and inclusion, and more broadly diversity and inclusion in your organization? Because as we all know, it's broader than simply gender. That helps marginalized communities to engage in corporate life and succeed. So yeah, my big thing is making sure, one is reach out to me, always open to a coffee or a discussion or a call, a video call, not to use any brand names. But the particular thing that I think is really important, and I'm seeing really beautifully from our generation of female leaders, is actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk, and learning and growing from our youngers. You know, I've got a huge amount of development that I've done from getting feedback about, you know, my views, you know, where we thought we were being helpful on inclusion back in the day, and actually we realized these things aren't so good. You know, I really think it's important now to have quotas to make sure there are women on panels. We've seen a huge slip back with that during the pandemic, and I went to a lot of political conferences, and there's been a lot of remark about it being full of manels. I was very excited when a manel actually mentioned the importance of childcare to the economy. But yeah, so making sure we learn and grow and actually walk the walk of delivering inclusive activity within the organizations we work within.
Well, Flora, those are words to live by. So a great closing note. It has been fantastic to have you on our podcast. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. All our podcasts are also available on our website at innovatefinance.com. So please do tune in for more insights on fintech and financial innovation. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.